Welcome to the Growth Catalyst Show, where we believe that growth could come in many forms: professional, personal, company, sales, you name it. I'm your host, Dan Mahoney, founder of Transcendent Sales Solutions and a guide to a world of growth possibilities. I've spent my career empowering companies and their people with strategies that accelerate growth. I'm here to bring you stories of these business leaders and their trusted advisors to gain insights into their journeys and learn how they fuel their own growth. Just maybe their journey could become part of your own growth story. Are you ready? Let's grow. Hey everyone, welcome to the next episode of the Growth Catalyst Show. I'm your host, Dan Mahoney, and I am very excited to have two guests here today. I'd like to introduce our guests for the show today, Paris Williams, the CEO and founder, and James William, co-founder and lead CFO for Next Level Financial Partners. Next Level Financial Partners provides financial operating system for companies that are in need of a CFO. Paris and James, welcome to the Growth Catalyst Show.
Thank you, Dan. Great to be here.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, we are really glad to be here. Thank you.
So I want to talk about your journeys. And, you guys, the interesting thing, and as I was doing research a little bit and learning more about your company, is you guys have very different backgrounds. And and so Paris, start with you. I mean, you've been in the business now since you founded it in 2018. And from what I can see, you had an educational background and we're in the education space. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having us. I think it is very interesting, and I get that a lot. People say, well, I looked at your LinkedIn and I saw that you were like a school leader. And so, yes, I have evolved to get to this point to working in business with James. So I started my career as a school teacher. Then I went and became a school leader. So I was a principal of an elementary school. And gained a lot of leadership skills and a lot of experience working with students and parents and community members. Actually opened up a brand new school in Sacramento, and later worked at a different school, kind of doing the same thing. And I always had an entrepreneurial gift, though. Always wanted to really work in business and try something different. So I actually then shifted into working in real estate. Meanwhile, James was doing this financial consulting kind of on the side as a side hustle and nudging me a little bit to support more in the business. And I thought, I don't think James really wants to work with me. We are also married and have been for over 20 years. So I thought, it's probably better that I'm doing my own thing and he's doing his thing. But the season rolled around, and a couple years ago, James asked me again, hey, to come into the business. It was kind of in its second or third iteration. And I was ready. I thought, he can handle me. I'm a lot.
You see,
a lot in a good way. Hey, a lot in a good way. And so it felt like it was a good time to transition full time into working in the business. So I do not have a finance background. James does. And that's part of what makes this work is our different backgrounds.
Well, and again, for your background in working with children and in parents in the school system, you definitely have an advanced degree, I'm sure, in patience.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And James, so you got to follow that now, my friend.
Steve, why didn't you I wanted to go first, Dan. Why did you make me go second?
James, I'm smarter than that. So and I look at your background, and you went from working for one of the big four in auditing to private equity to directorships in finance and asset management. So talk a little bit about your journey, what got you to be a business owner.
Yeah, sure. So, I sort of, as far as from a professional standpoint, I started in public accounting, so grew up as an auditor, worked for Ernst & Young. It's interesting because I was just telling someone my introduction into sort of the real business world was maybe a couple of years after the dot-com bust. And so working for Ernst and Young, and I was working in the Bay Area in Silicon Valley, and there were all of these what I would call zombie companies, and these were companies that raised a lot of money, but at this time the bust had already taken place. And so I would go into these companies to audit these companies, and walking into these large office buildings and these floors, and there were tons of cubicles that were completely empty. Like people had been there at one point in time, and there's all these computers that were sort of like pushed off to the side, and then there would be like spots of people just working in different spots. And so it was just a crazy time. But I did learn a lot. Those companies had, raised a lot of money, and they were on their sort of last, on their last leg, in terms of just, being able to make it. They weren't really making any profit because the demand wasn't there. So I learned a lot in that time. Also through the rest of my career as working as an audit perspective. And yeah, start working in private equity, and I really sort of really gained a real sort of passion and just like real interest, curiosity about how to what made good companies good, and how to make companies even better. And so you learn about all of these things, and all this sort of jargon talking about how to leverage and operationalize and all that kind of stuff, um, which was pretty interesting. And just learned a ton during that time, and then started getting into investing and finance, and I ran individual finance organizations. So within the company, I was sort of the lead finance person. So all the way up to where we are. And what's interesting is the first iteration of Next Level was more focused on financial planning. I was, and I think this probably happens to a lot of accountants and or people who are in accounting and finance. Like, there's always people that ask, can I ask you a question? Like, these are just individual people. Can you help me with this? Or they think I'm a tax expert, and then they're like, you know, I'm wondering about my taxes. And I was like, I'm not a tax expert. Okay, I can't help you with
Worse than
that.
worse than being a lawyer, right?
Right, right. Um, and so over the years, I was like, well, maybe I should do something with this. People are always coming and asking me for financial advice. And so I started to do some financial planning. And then I sort of focused it on business owners because, again, just sort of going back to that area that I really enjoyed. And so did okay, but never really got the traction that I wanted it to, and just sort of, kind of let it go. And then maybe a year or so after that, I was in a leadership program, and one of my cohort partners was like, "Hey, she owned her own business. It's like, can you help me with X, Y, and Z?" I was like, I'll talk to you. Maybe I can help you out a little bit. And had a conversation with her and gave her some advice, and she wanted to know if we can really make it formalized. And I was like, nah, I don't really do that. And so sort of let that lie. And then in between time, I had another friend come to me. He was the CEO of a logistics company, and he was like, "Hey, I could really use some help." And I was like, well, maybe I could do something. And then I just started to, the light just kind of just, it takes me a while, as Paris will say, well, it'll take me a
Yeah,
while to
yeah.
really understand. And the light just started to come on. I was like, well, maybe there's something really here, where I can help individuals from a financial perspective in their business. And started to do that and work with my friend who owned this publication, logistics company. And then the other friend came back later on, maybe 6 months later. She's like, can we really do something? I was like, yeah, I think we can. And that was where really we began to really just formalize this iteration of Next Level, to begin to grow to where we are today.
So you backed into it really. It wasn't the plan and you backed into it. And sometimes
Yeah.
those are the best business, very similar on how I started my fractional VP of sales business, backing
Mhm.
into it with somebody I knew. So,
Yeah.
tell me, one of the things that I think is very, that's unique in a sense is, you guys are partners, but you're life partners, and you have this, what I would call a 360-degree partnership. How do you find that balance between work and, I know you have a family with kids, and how do you find that balance? And sometimes, I know we talked about this a few weeks ago. I mentioned, how do you shut this off?
Yeah.
How do you shut it off?
Yeah. I'm gonna let
You
Paris go.
don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's so interesting when people have their different arguments about balance. And I just think we don't really turn it off. I mean, like it was a couple weeks ago, we went on a date night, we walked and we were having dinner and then we just kept on talking about the business. And I was like, I don't know. I think this is a business meeting. Because we just couldn't stop. And so I don't know that we're necessarily examples just yet, but we've decided that we really want to be all in building our business because we're still, I mean, we're growing, but we're in build mode still, right? Because of the iterations of the business. So I think that there's not really a perfect balance, but I think that like what makes us work really well as a couple is also what makes us work as business partners too, right? So as James is sharing about, how he's very methodical, I always say he does this super focused work, when he is in his office, and I always tell people he's the smartest person I know. And he's super focused in ways that I'm not. I'm like at the door, like, hey, I got an idea. I want to do this. So, had somebody brought me the idea to start a business, I would have been like jumping on it. Like, when can we start? Let's start right now. But James is super methodical. I kind of lean more towards action. And sometimes in a way that could be harmful. So that's where it helps that we kind of balance each other out. And so, for example, part of my role is to be out meeting people, sharing about the business, and that very much gives me a lot of energy. James could do that, but it's not going to give him a lot of energy to be out, every other night talking to people about our business and the work that we do. So that's my answer. As far as, being life partners, it also helps that we've been together for a really long time and that we didn't start out doing this business together. I think it's good that we'd already been together 20 years before we really formed the business partnership.
James, and I'm guessing that your children will give you guys a kind of a check once in a while and go, Mom, Dad, come on already. I'm sure you're at your kids your age. You're starting to see that.
Yeah, well, then, they don't quite roll their eyes, but sometimes when we have our family meeting on Sunday evenings, and we're talking about the week and what's going on and who has what, and then of course, every time we'll end up talking about the business and what we have to do and who and Bears has to be there, and then we just kind of get into this whole conversation like we're the only people in the family meeting, and then you glance over and the kids are there and they're just like, they're waiting to be released and go on their iPads and phones and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that does happen. We try to involve them, and we do in some ways. Just having them, work on different things. Like my son helps with QuickBooks, for example. My daughter has done projects, small projects. So we're very much trying to include them. But yeah, I mean, and I wouldn't say it's not against their will because they do earn a little bit of money and they like earning money for doing these things. Um, but they're not necessarily the most enthusiastic about it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
we've done a really good job of planting seeds. So part of our vision, because both of us had family members with businesses that didn't really go anywhere. They didn't sell the business ended up closing down. And so for us, part of the vision is that one of the kids would want to be involved. So we make sure to like plant those seeds, like, sure would be nice. If one of the kids, it would be great if, you could take it over, or we could build it in such a way that they can take it over. And so it's interesting because I was at a college fair today with our oldest, who's 16. And initially, he said he wanted to be in international business. And now I was listening in as he was talking to the different people at the college fair. He said he wanted to go into finance. And I was like,
Oh,
oh, look at that. Sounds familiar. So I think the seed planting is working.
that's awesome. That's great. Great influence. And if you talk about, as I went out and I learned a few years ago when I got into my business, not all fractional CFOs are the same. And there's a big difference. So Paris, talk a little bit about how Next Level is different from other firms. Let's take a moment for a quick word from our sponsor. This episode of the Growth Catalyst Show was brought to you by Transcendent Sales Solutions. Whether your company is facing uncertainty, declining sales, or resource limitations, Transcendent Sales has the solution. Their team has decades of experience helping businesses find alignment to meet their growth goals and transforming underperforming sales organizations into revenue-producing market leaders. They take a hands-on, results-oriented approach to solving sales challenges. Visit transcendentsales.com to learn more and subscribe to the bi-weekly Growth Catalyst newsletter for insightful growth strategies. Transcendent Sales Solutions, empowering businesses to reach new heights. And now back to the show.
Yeah, I think part of it is, and this is really, I've learned a lot from James. I think back to his background in accounting. So most CFOs, I would imagine, have this accounting and finance background. And so I think part of it is we work with smaller businesses, so in the $2 to $20 million range. And a lot of the people that I meet, when they think about a CFO, they're thinking about somebody who's really in these larger corporate environments. They think, well, for my small business, I have an accountant, and really your accountant is looking backward, and your CFO looks backwards and forward as far as really the forecasting and the cash flow management. So I think part of what we do that's different is we really have a structured system. And I think a lot of the CFOs are pretty wide open in the services that they do. Like, okay, we're doing strategy, we're doing the finance part, we're doing cash flow. And for the small business, I think what's super valuable for them is creating this super structured system. So we come in, we do the 6 weeks of onboarding. We're able to pretty seamlessly onboard them, depending on who we're working with. And then and James has these weekly meetings with them that are super focused. So for example, he does the cash flow meeting, he has a pipeline meeting, and these all build up to him talking about their forecast, which a lot of companies at this size they haven't had a forecast that they're continually looking at once a month. So I think the idea of having this super structure, and James, you can add on to it, and making sure that they're consistently meeting to talk about these things so that they're not everywhere, right? He could be meeting with them about a million different things. But I think that at the base level, it would be coming up with that really specific structure.
And, and with that, one of the things I've always felt is, when I work with business owners, they just don't know their numbers. They don't know their numbers. They have a financial system. They all have a financial system. But one thing I see that you advertise is, James, is your financial operating system, which I think is what kind of Paris is alluding. So talk a little bit about that uniqueness of that.
Yeah, I think that and Paris hit the nail around the head. It really is about bringing a level of consistency in the business. Um, and I was talking to Paris about this earlier. There are business owners out there that are savvy enough to understand a lot of the things that we're doing and know how to do some of those things. But there's two things. they don't have the time and to do these
Mm-hmm.
things. And even if they did make time, they're another part of their business is going to be suffering. So the having the time and the inclination, the sort of drive to be great in this particular area, it's not optimal for business owners at the size that we serve, right? So what's really different about us is, as Paris said, we can do a lot of different things. We have a skill set where we can do a lot of different projects. And maybe there's something happening in terms of maybe we need to help the company raise some money. We can do that. We can do that type of work. But what we are really keen on, and we sort of set the tone with our business owners, is like we need to have a system in terms of how we operate, so that number one, you are looking at your numbers on a monthly basis. I'm helping to interpret what that means. We're setting benchmarks. We're setting targets. We understand where cash is. We understand how to manage cash, and that's one of the stumbling blocks that a lot of our small businesses have. Is that if they're not managing cash, they go from crisis to crisis like every 6 weeks
Mm-hmm.
or every 12 weeks, because they're not really paying attention to it. And that's no shade on them. It's just they got a lot going on, and so that's where we come in. But yeah, the real key is our system. As Paris said, we're doing forecasting. So on a monthly basis, we're looking at the current business conditions, and we're saying like, okay, in order to reach our targets, we need to sell 3 of these, 4 of these, 5 of these. So all the way down to the unit level. So we're trying to make it really plain. So we're not saying like you need to grow your sales by 12%. Yes. And then we're also saying this is how you can do it. This is how you practically can do that. So we're helping with that. We're helping our clients with their pipeline. So, a lot of our clients, they'll have a CRM system. In fact, this week was our pipeline week. And in our pipeline week, what we do is we look at the data in their CRM system, and we go through each of those opportunities, and we say, okay, what's the likelihood of this really transpiring? What's the timing on this? Is this real? Is it not real? Um, you know, and as you know, and salespeople are most optimistic people in the world. Like, oh yeah, 100% it's going to close.
It's in the bank. It's in the bank. That's right.
So we're having these
Until it's
meetings,
not.
right? Right. So when we're having these meetings, a lot of times we'll have the business owner, we'll have the head of sales, we'll have the operations person there, and the goal is we to create this alignment. So, for example, in one of my meetings, it wasn't necessarily about the sales team in terms of the where the challenge was. It really was operationally, and it was like, in order to hit our targets, we need to deliver a little faster. So we need to pick up the
Mm-hmm.
pace, type of thing. So we're having those conversations with our clients, and what we call sort of optimizing, and so creating a little bit of accountability and putting a little bit of a sort of analytical sort of framework around what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing that, and of course, we're reviewing the financial statement. So we have our 4 key components, and we're putting it all into a system, and we're hitting on it every month. And the key really is, Dan, is consistency. Is
Yeah.
consistency.
I was thinking the word cadence because you're putting
Yeah,
them on a cadence, something that they've never done before consistently.
exactly.
Look at your numbers when we're doing taxes, or we don't have cash. Let's look at our numbers, but looking at them consistently, I think makes the big difference.
Exactly.
Paris, when you're out and you do most of the business development, you're doing a lot of the business development out there. For the firm. So tell me, what are when you start talking to a prospective client, what are some of the things that you're hearing that give you the indication, wow, you need some help here?
Yeah. I don't know that I necessarily know when I'm out and about whether they need help. Honestly, I always say the people we work with, they know they need help. And
Mhm.
so it'll come as I'm out talking to people and they'll say, what do you do? And, I can share about the four pillars, the operating system. But as I begin to share stories of, successful companies who have built to maybe 10 million, but they want to set a goal and they're not necessarily sure how to do that. So they're kind of shooting in the dark a little bit, saying, like, okay, I had 10 million in revenue this year. Next year, I want to get to 15. And so part of it is asking questions about how did you come up with that number, right? Because, you know,
Mhm.
folks are, again, savvy, smart, entrepreneurial folks. And a lot of them have this sales vibe, like James was saying, that, like, yes, I can do it, very optimistic. But if you start digging a little bit deeper, and then I start sharing, well, what we do is we make sure that you have the data to set those goals and to track those goals. That's part of the forecast. And so folks will be like, oh, that would be great because, we just thought, well, if we've been growing, we just kind of set a goal. So I think part of it is really having a listening ear to the business owner and also listening for kind of their mindset, like whether they're really wanting to grow or they're just kind of happy where they are, which
Mhm.
it's fine, but we're really trying to focus on kind of professional services companies, folks that are wanting to grow. And so as I'm talking to people, if I hear them saying that they want to grow, or maybe that they're a little bit frustrated with wanting to have another big hire. So a lot of times, again, as they're growing, maybe they want to bring on some different people, but they're not really exactly sure um, how to go about to do that. Kind of the nitty gritty of feeling comfortable making those big decisions. And so that's sort of the start where it starts and where I can see that it might be a good fit or good match for us to work with them.
So they're not always in crisis mode, basically, when you're talking to them.
No,
Okay.
no.
All right, James, share a recent success story with just a business that you guys have been working with, and kind of where they started, and how they progressed.
Yeah, sure. So one of our clients, actually interesting. Our focus now is between 2 and 20 million, but we have a client that was below that level, and this client a had some pretty good demand, um, but was kind of running all over the place, trying to keep up with the demand. And there was at several points through our engagement, different points where they didn't have the capacity to take on additional work, and at the same time was a little bit sort of nervous about bringing on other staff full time. And I think like one of our words was like, I'm going to be responsible for these people, and they're responsible for their families. So they were feeling the weight of that sort of ownership, and if things don't things go south, then so feeling that type of anxiety. So we started when we were working together. The question was, I want to be able to bring on two additional people into the business. Does it make sense for me to do that, given everything that's going on right now, the current demand, the current capacity? So we did some analysis. We put together some longer term projections to get comfort in the short run and even the longer term run, and we felt good enough based on what we were seeing in terms of what was going to be coming in terms of revenue, and and also including that cost, the additional costs and load factors in there. We felt comfortable with adding them in. So I said, yeah, it's this is going to work based on where you are right now. She ended up hiring those couple of people. Revenue grew. I want to say 30%, something like that, and then hit another point where it was like the same type of thing, where more business was coming in. You know, should we hire more people? Should we bring some folks in? So they continue to grow their revenue, And part of us giving them the confidence to do that is that we're consistently giving her a view of the future, right, and what it's going to look like. So that's just one example, but really, these are savvy people, and they just need the confidence to be able to know that what they're doing is making sense and the decisions are right on track.
Paris, tell me, give our listeners kind of some growth tips, like whether they're looking to grow their career professionally or they're looking to even grow their business. From your experience, give us a couple of tidbits.
Yeah. Well, I always think it's great to partner with somebody who has the gifts and talents and skills that you don't have. I mean, I think that's big. And we meet a lot of solopreneurs, and I think that part of it is somehow getting people on your team that can support you to grow to that next level, because people are always a part of the solution. Um, and so I think that that's big. And I always talk about the book E-Myth because I was like the last person to read it. Um, so now I go around talking about it like it's brand new. I'm like, there's this new book called E-Myth, and people look at me like I'm crazy. But the whole idea of the entrepreneur, manager, and technician was so eye-opening to me.
Mhm.
And so I think folks just really understanding where your strengths are and trying to spend more of your time there can help you to really grow. Right. So I always tell people, don't start asking me while we're out a ton of questions about your finance, because I'm not the one. I will set you up with James because James, although he can operate in the entrepreneur manager space, he's definitely the technician. Right. This is his thing. So I think if you're trying to grow, surround yourself with people that are different from you, that bring different skills to the table, that can ask, challenging questions, challenge you, and help you to grow. And I would also say, don't stretch yourself too thin. I think we're inundated with all this information about what you should do, right? And so, for example, with social media, like right now, the only thing I'm on is LinkedIn because it's too much. I've got things going on. I'm managing it. I do have someone who supports with marketing, but still, it's like the ability to be able to make a decision and focus in on one area, I think can really help us to grow.
Great advice. James, any tidbits from your end?
Um, I would say, I guess this is normal. I'm just going to piggyback off of Paris because she's got all the great the great ideas. Um, but yeah, this idea of really working on your business as opposed to just working in your business.
Mhm.
And that is essentially what we are here to do to help our business owners. As you were saying earlier, a lot of business owners, they're not looking at their numbers. They're not looking at their accounts. They're not looking at their financial statements if they have them. They don't have dashboards, metrics, those types of things. And it is, in my estimation, absolutely critical to be looking at this key information and 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 I get it as a small business owner. If you don't have the capacity, it's difficult to do, but it's absolutely critical. And for us, what we help our business owners do as well is set goals and set targets. And so, how do we know that how we're doing against those goals and targets unless we come back to them? So, like, I'm the sort of consistent guy that comes back and says, okay, this is how we're doing so far, on track, off track. How can we, Paris is laughing because she knows that's me. How do we get to the next level? How do we continue to move? And to me, it's not all, it's not a bad thing that, they're, maybe they're behind in their goals. But the key is that you're looking at them and you're working on it and you try to course correct when you see yourself slipping. So the main tidbit that I have is really take some time, step outside of your business, look at it from a 20,000 foot level, 30,000 foot level, and really see, are things working? What's working? What's not working? Are we coming closer to our goals? Are we not? What adjustments can we make? And continue that cadence. We focus on quarters. So we're making goals and we're setting them based on on a quarterly time frame. And so that's just enough time to tackle some initiatives, and then you look and you see, you evaluate, and then you adjust, and then you do it again. So work on your business, not just in it.
It's great advice. Paris, last question. If one of our listeners is interested in learning more about Next Level Partners, what's the best way, other, of course, than LinkedIn, to maybe get a hold of you?
Oh, yeah. LinkedIn is a great way to get a hold of me. Also, our website, nextlevelfinancial.co. So that is the best way to reach us. And if you email me, it's paris@nextlevelfinancial.co.
James, Paris, I've really enjoyed the conversation with you today. It was very enlightful, great advice, and appreciate you both guesting here today on the Growth Catalyst Show.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Growth Catalyst Show. Remember, you can take these stories of growth and make them part of your own journey. Learn from them, draw inspiration, and let them guide your path of growth. I'm your host, Dan Mahoney, and I look forward to our next journey together. If you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, keep growing.